Hi, everybody. I'm here with Sarah Calmetta. She is an aviation and aerospace coach. Um, and I'm super excited to be talking with you. Her expertise is dealing with burnt out leaders, and she coaches them and creates success for them. And welcome, Sarah. Thank you for joining in on this.
Thank you so much, Amy, for having me.
So tell me a little bit, how did you get involved with aerospace and aviation, first of all?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have been obsessed with the stars since I could first talk. My first two words were for star and airplane, and it just kept catapulting from there. And so I was in a program called Civil Air Patrol in high school, which is where you learn how to fly. And you also learn about the Air Force through that program. We do search and rescue. And then I went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, where I got a degree in aviation business administration and a minor in Asian studies. And I found myself in the private jet sector shortly after I graduated. And most recently have been diving really deep into the aerospace division, which I could not be more excited about.
I know, I'm so excited to hear more about that. So how did you get into the space of coaching? Like, what is it that you do when you're coaching the leaders in the aviation space? Because you have such a unique niche.
Yes.
And I think while like me and you both, train in leadership and success and empowerment, find it fascinating how it goes across the different industries. So tell me a little bit about how you decided that was needed in that industry.
Absolutely. Well, having been in the industry for a long time, I knew that there was a lot of dynamic energy in the space. And you can also read dynamic as chaotic, right? Dynamic is the PC word, especially if you're in charter. And, you could be sitting here right now doing this podcast with me. And then all of a sudden my phone rings and I've got a plane taking off in 2 hours. So it can be a very stressful environment. And, I lived through that. I was in the trenches. I started my career as a scheduler at a Part 91 and Part 135, which is private and charter flight operations company in California and Van Nuys. And over the years, I just saw where the holes were and the gaps were. And I geek out on personal development, professional development, neuroscience, and all those things. So I always naturally in my roles, especially as I moved up into leadership, would be coaching the teams. And I then started to also be identified. I mean, even from my very first job when I was 20 years old, to take ownership of the training programs that we had in-house. And then
Okay.
later, I started to develop my own training programs because I saw a gap. I realized every time I brought in some speaker or Franklin Covey facilitator, someone that's really coaching is their bread and butter, right? Leadership
Right.
is butter, but they could not land, pun intended, the analogies or the stories with my team. And so, I was open enough and geeking out that I was like, yeah, this is great. But everyone else around me was like, well, that's for somebody who works 9 to 5. And I have a billionaire calling me right now and their plane is broken. This is not going to work for me. Right. And so
Right.
saying that I had to translate effectively. So I became a world bridger, if you will. So between departments, between industries, cultures, I was based in Asia for a long time. And so as I started to do more and more of that, it just became this natural fit. And so when I was setting up my own business in 2020, a lot of people were asking, hey, have you thought of being a coach? And I was just smiling, going, well, that's exactly what I'm doing. So I'm glad that it's clearly alignment. So, being able to speak the language of your target audience is really important. And the fact that I have the street cred, if you will, because of my 15 years in the industry, allows me to connect at a much deeper level and use these metaphors and analogies and really get them to understand how it will help them and breathe, right? One of the things is when you're in that fight or flight mode all day long, we forget to breathe. And then that causes
Yeah.
all sorts of other problems. So, I went off a little tangent and did my yoga teacher training, and I did a lot of mindfulness and meditation and energetic work. And now I bring all of that in together to be able to deliver that and help burnt out leaders pivot so that they can actually enjoy what they're doing again. Aviation and aerospace is full of really passionate people. And when that light dims in their eyes and they're really jaded, it's like a knife in my heart. So my mission is to really show people that the pivot is their superpower, and that there is a different way of working where you can still be effective, you can still be high performing, and you can still make lots of money without the stress.
That is so good. Wow. What do you think the biggest result is that they get from it? Is your program actually called Pivot?
No, no. So the program is called the Success Accelerator Program. And
Okay.
what we're doing in that is it's a 90-day journey. So we're together for 12 weeks. And what we do there is we get clarity on what's actually happening, because in that chaotic environment, it's like being in a lake and I've taken a stick down to the bottom where there's mud and I've just gone like this, right? Crap and everything everywhere. And you can't see where you're going, right? And in those moments, not many of us, especially in the beginning of our careers, know that there's an instrument panel, like in an airplane, that can allow you to navigate even when you can't see out the window, right? But when you don't have your instrument rating yet, you're not allowed to take off unless you have the visible flight rules, right? You can follow the visually and see where you're going and map it out. So it's a process. So basically taking people from visual flight rules to instrument rating, where they can then start to understand, hey, these are the tools available. These are what they do. Now I know how to apply them when I need them, not just all the time use one, right? And then from there, we can put in some boundaries, work boundaries. How do we communicate, especially at that high level? With ultra high net worth individuals, we need to be clear, concise, and full of conviction. If we waver in any way, that's going to create problems, stories, assumption, everything. And we all do it. We're human, right? Doesn't matter who you're to. But once we get that clarity, we can start to identify, how do I structure my time? How do I become super focused so that I can continue this high performance without draining my battery, right? A lot of us operate like we're on that 1%. It's like this extreme game. Our phone's on 1%. We're still trying to send the email, right? It's like
the car's on E, the car's on E. Right, the E.
It's an extreme sport, right? And then if you get it, adrenaline, dopamine, and then it's like, oh my God. And if you don't, your phone has died. Now all of that you've written is probably lost. You're waiting 10 minutes before the damn thing turns on and you have no idea what's happening. So it's really not a great situation to be in. But when we set our environment up for success, I call it having your SAS in place, your semi-automatic support system. Then we can take action with conviction. We know that even if we don't know the answer, we know how to find the answer. So it's all real foundational to help people pivot through change so that they can move their focus, not just on from the outcome and what they're doing and achieving, but who they're being. Because once you focus on that, you have the right order of operations. And when you're being the person who is confident, who has conviction, when you're being the leader, all of these other things start to fall into place. And then we start to work on things like imposter syndrome and communication tactics, and how we improve our adaptability quotient, how we improve our answer intelligence. And then this is what allows us to continue climbing. If that's what people want to do, is be in the corporate space, continue climbing that ladder, getting into greater roles with greater responsibility. Or if they realize they're out of alignment, they're like this right now, right? What's the best way? This way. They're like this. How do we come back? How do we get back on that center line so that we are going in a direction that feels good? We have a long runway in front of us, which means we can take off and fly further. We don't have to stop for fuel. We can probably even go faster, right? We upgrade our plane systems. And so I get real punny with it because, hey, I'm in aviation, right? And, once we do that, then, a lot of times I work with individuals. And so they walk away with this superpower ability of just being able to make decisions, clear, decisive decisions, and feel good in that. Right. And so we cut away all the stuff we don't need and we get them really laser focused. When I work with a business, then what I do is I help pivot the SOPs, the standard operating procedures, so that they are in alignment with the company's culture. And so
Yeah.
that really makes sense, right? Maybe the SOP exists, but it was written 5 years ago, and you've now added 20 aircraft to your fleet, or you have a completely new team of people, which includes younger generations and less of the older generations. So the style of working is different. The way that you talk to clients is different. And being to adapt in that environment while tying in the corporate culture is really key. A lot of times companies hire a consultant and they get this beautiful program and this beautiful roadmap, which then sits on a binder in a shelf and does not get enacted. And so I'm real clear in that what we're doing, we're building together, and we're going to make sure that there's regular checkpoints for buy-in, so that this is something that becomes systemic and it's sustainable, that you're not just one hit wonder, 1 year profit. This is, what's our long-term vision here?
Right.
Move towards that.
Awesome. That's such a good program. It's so needed too, everywhere, especially with the different generations and work styles and that whole what they call quiet quitting going on right now. That's a big part of that. And how you've created that is just absolutely amazing. What do you think the biggest result in working with you has been?
The biggest result in working with me is people taking ownership of their life, their leadership, their style. And instead of trying to wear a mask, right, and be something for somebody else, they're being who they need to be for themselves. And from there, they can have greater impact in their businesses and the people that are around them. And so with me, we're really stripping everything away and we're getting down to the core of that person and having them, they walk away with full ownership of, if they don't like something, they can change it. And they know that they can create their own reality, create their own opportunities. Doesn't matter what's going on in the economy right now. It doesn't matter what so-and-so is doing over there. You are responsible for your life and the results in it.
So awesome. Can I hire you? I live by an airport.
We can have a live for sure.
um, you're just recently getting into aerospace. Tell me a little bit about how that came about and where you're hoping to go with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been obsessed with space since forever, right? I wanted to be an astronaut. And then as I was getting, older, I wanted to be a fighter pilot, and my eyes were not great. And I was, essentially told, hey, if it's you and somebody else neck and neck, exactly equal across all spectrums, and their eyes are perfect, they're going to get chosen over you. Fair enough, right? There's a lot of money that goes into these spots. So I decided that flying, I love being around airplanes. Get me in a hangar and I'm like a kid in a candy shop. Get me in a rocket ship hangar and I'm like squealing. But I took some Cessna 172 early, discovery flights, and it was like, cool. Now what? Right? Like I was just kind of bored. And, the thought of being an airline pilot or doing that as my every single day didn't excite me to the level that I saw people around me light up like how I'm lighting up right now, or how when I talk about space, I have the sparkle in my eye. So I thought, okay, it's not my path to become the pilot, but it's my path to be around it. Right.
Right.
And I was in Asia for 13 years. And so the space dream kind of low burn, right? I just put it onto simmer. And quite frankly, put it out of my mind for a long time because, well, there's no space program I can be part of over there. And, there wasn't a community and a network, and really only the commercialization of space is quite recent, right?
Right.
Now that I've pivoted back to the US and have been more active in the events that are here, I was at a keynote speech in Nashville in January by Miss Michelle Mace-Kern, who's a ex-female Thunderbird fighter pilot. She's going to be on my podcast at the end of the month, March 30th, 12:30 Central Time. And she talked about imposter syndrome and following your dreams and what if you don't take the chance, right?
Mm-hmm.
It really reconnected me with this dream. And afterwards, I had a conversation with the president of the National Business Aviation Association, Ed Bolin. I actually just emailed him to say thank you, because we had this conversation where I was explaining this to him, and he's like, it's not too late. And he's like, there are so many opportunities for you to get involved in this. And he's like, and with the way things are going, he's like, I see you going into space. He's like, yeah, you're going to go. It's just a matter of when. And I was like, yes. And in my book, I know I'm going. I don't know when or how, but I know I'm going. Right. And so this has just become where I put my attention and my intention. And people, I think, are responding to that frequency, the energy I'm putting out. They see the sparkle in my eye. I started just connecting with all of these people. All of a sudden in my orbit, I just made a post on LinkedIn, these incredible, interesting human beings who have been to space, who have, who are going to space, who are in the industry, and just like being in that energy. And then realizing too, this is not just about Sarah wants to be an astronaut. This is what this can mean for humankind, right? And I think for me,
Yeah.
as you often explored Far Asia, and I went over there, and I have that explorer mindset and mentality. It's just in my nature, so the thought of going into deep space and exploring for the new horizon is like, that lights me up, and the possibilities that could mean, it's just, and the things we could learn in zero gravity and the science experiments, and so it's just, all of a sudden my mind is whirling. And it's been really cool in the last 5 weeks only, since putting my attention there, that I have met these incredible people, and I've joined the analog astronaut community, and a space conference in May, and I have signed up for Space Kind training, which starts on May 4th. So May the 4th be with you. Totally geek out and do that all day long. And until then, as I talk about it. So I'm just really excited about the opportunities that are ahead of me, and how I can incorporate everything that I learn into how I coach people, and to how I help businesses, and most importantly, to have a greater impact. Right. And
Right.
Women in Aviation has been an organization I've been really liaising with a lot lately, and to show little girls in particular that careers in aviation and aerospace are open to them, and that there's all this possibility, and that they can do it. It might be hard, but you can do it. Right. And hard, just because you're passionate about something doesn't mean it won't be hard. But when that clarity, the hard becomes secondary, and it's not what you focus on.
Right. That's so awesome. So awesome. I know when you were talking about you lighting up, you had made a post, and it was just like, ever since then, it's just like you're just totally magnetic. And it's just like you just want to follow everything you're doing now. It's so inspiring. Um, what advice would you give to somebody who started a business, it's not where they want it to be, to keep reaching for your dreams? Because I mean, you really define and wear it naturally on just go for it, just do it. And it's not going to hurt you if it doesn't work that moment, but just keep trying. What would you say to somebody who's struggling there and thinking about hanging up the hat and just not having that momentum they're wanting?
Yes, absolutely. So I would encourage people in that situation to really reconnect back to that why in their heart. Why did they start their business? Why is this so important to them? Because when we focus on the impact that we're having, the income comes later. When we focus on the income, we don't have the impact, and we're then only focused on outcome, right? When I have this much money, I will be successful. And it's not about that, right? Nobody starts, okay, I should rephrase. Some people do start a business only to make money, but at the end of the day, there's still an impact that they're having, and they've identified what impact they could have, and they've created a need, or they've filled a need. Apple created a need for iPhones, right? Nobody knew we needed that before they were in existence. And so it's really tapping back into that and thinking, like, what's it going to be like when you have that impact? Ask yourself that question. When you can have that impact, what does that mean? What does it mean for you? What does it mean for your spouse, your kids, your family members? the people that you work with, the adjacent industries that you're going to be supporting or network with. And, how can you keep coming back to this, right? It's all about being in alignment with where you want to go and operating from when I have this, I will be, and just being success or being the CEO mindset, right? You might be one person. I'm one person. I'm the CEO of Pivot Point International, and I'm also the CEO of my own life.
Yeah.
So I have to take ownership and responsibility of that and recognize, like, why am I doing what I'm doing? What's the impact it's going to have on me? Because when I understand that is going to allow me to put my oxygen mask on, be nourished, and then have the impact for others. So you have to, people think it's selfish, but you have to start with self.
Yeah, definitely. I always say, when you talk about your why or think about it, make it selfish. Because while it's amazing to want to impact other people, you can't until you're impacting yourself. So I love that you explained that there. How can people contact you and follow your journey, especially to go to space, and encourage you and support you in that? And yes, put her up in space. We want her in space. But how can they start working with you and connect with you? And of course, I'll post your links below in the comment section of this once we get off here and stuff. So, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So much. So for those of you watching live or that will see the recording, we did this on Zoom, and you'll probably see the name Sarah the Pivoter down at the bottom. If you Google that on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, you will find me. So go ahead and send me a friend request. Let me know what you're looking for, and we can have a conversation to see if and how I can help you. And then, is the Success Accelerator program the best for you, or should we be looking at, one of my other offerings? I'll also share the link for the Success Accelerator program with Amy so that they can be posted with the show notes. The next cohort will go live on May 3rd. So what does that mean? That means as I am doing my journey with Space Kind, you will be in my program. So you will be getting the impact of that, and I will be sharing all of that wealth of knowledge from what I learn and unearth there with all of you, in addition to what obviously the program has already been built on.
And that podcast, do you have a link to it that we can post with this?
That's a good question. So right now the podcast is going to be live on LinkedIn, my Facebook page, and YouTube. So if you follow one of those, and you can subscribe to, there's an event on LinkedIn, and then you can get notified, and it will be a live stream. So you'll be able to watch it. It will be posted after we record. And then probably in April, I'll be launching the podcast on Apple, iTunes, and Spotify. So maybe later retroactively, we can add that link as well for people to subscribe.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. It's such a pleasure speaking with you as always. Thank you for doing the interview, and I wish you all the success in the world.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And out of this world.
Exactly. To infinity and beyond.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Amy.
You're welcome.